Good afternoon, good evening, good zinta, good y'all, whatever it may be where you are. I'm not Sports Cards. Hope you're doing well. It's been a while since I've been here. Whatever. I come and I talk when I like to talk. We're going to go over the Star Wars card market. I used to do this quite often, once a month or, you know, every other month. And just look at kind of like the trends, the sales, pop reports, stuff like that. Give you my opinion, because it's only my opinion. Whether you agree with it or not, that's your problem. All right, so yeah, the last time that I did a video was 4 months ago. I did it on the eve of the airing of Andor season 2, which turned out to be the best Star Wars show there ever was or will be. I'm being hyperbolic with that. Certainly, the critics loved it. I loved it. I didn't know what to make of it for a little while. And, that's been a part of the Star Wars market story for the last few months. There haven't been any real new products released in the last few months that have actually hit the shelves or what have you. I think Topps Chrome is coming out in a couple of weeks. Good luck with that. I'll go through some sales here in a minute. What do we have here? We're just looking at Star Wars PSA sales, and I'm just kind of, this goes back a few months. One thing I can tell you is that modern Star Wars cards for the most part, don't really need to be graded at PSA. Unless they're super big cards, it really is not adding a lot of value to them. And it's something to think about. I think part of the reason I don't spend as much time collecting as I used to is, some of my concerns with PSA. But that's a different story for a different day. Here's a nice Darth Vader PSA 9 that sold for $404. That is a super low price for that sticker. That's a really low pop sticker. I think it around 30 for it to go that price. I mean, part of what I would say is that what I've seen over the last few months is that prices are just all over the place. Like you have this Luke PSA 9 sells for $400, and I can show you a Series 1 card in a PSA 10, which is kind of the highest end stuff that sold for less. I want to see the original listing. Do they have the PSA data here? View official PS. Where do it said? Okay, see all PSA data. Okay, so there are only 210s of this card. That is why the PSA 9 one. It's just set registry, but then only 161 graded. So it just the set collectors cause some sporadic pricing. Here's a Vader PSA 8 going for $400. I mean, there's a time you could buy them for $150. You might still be able to buy them for $150. It's all over the place. Here's a PSA 10 77 card going for $382. I mean, Galaxy's. What I would certainly say is that when you see big sales, it's kind of 77 or Galaxy for the most part. Well, there's a couple other exceptions that we'll talk about here. I mean, this goes back 3 months. Here was Princess Leia PSA 10. What's the pop on this? There are 15 of these. Went for 10 grand. That's a very strong sale for that. So that was good to see. You have, I certainly believe there's a collector out here who pays top dollar for Vader Star Wars Galaxy. I think it's Steve Aoki. He owns a lot of them. So it's almost like people can, I don't want to say they can name their own price, but those seem to push up marks. There are a couple PSA 9 Luke sales here over the last few months. One for $43.75, one for $5,100 more recently. I think, again, I try not to get into it. Like, I think you have to examine those cards. The consistency of PSA's grades is not very high. I mean, you see here's a Hyperspace Pedro Pascal. I don't know what the actual sale was. I had 130 point up here somewhere. This just shows Star Wars cards over the last few months, what is sold the highest price. So you have this Galaxy Chrome Super Practor Vader. I don't know why some of this other stuff is in here. You have Natalie Portman 101 for $46.50 sticker auto. Jin Cassian dual superfractor 5500 superfractor of Pedro Pascal and Katie Sackhoff. You have an old the Masterwork Padme. But it's actually $3,000. Another superfractor Mando for $4,000. Does look like kind of there are people out there buying up the Pedro Pascal superfractors. I think that makes sense. I personally went after the rookie cards. I know the 101 rookie 2020 just got graded. I'd mentioned it before. I didn't know if it was real. It's real. You guys sent me pictures. It's in the PSA Pop report. I like to look at this because if you want to go backwards a few months, talking about Galactic Antiquities, that when that came out, retail was like $1,700, and what it was selling for was actually like closer to $3,000 and $4,000. It's an absolute unmitigated disaster for anybody who bought those cards. That's what I'm kind of my point is, like, you don't see a single card from there on this list selling for that price. So you're getting Carrie Fisher on cards, Harrison Ford on cards for the price of those boxes. I think the modern stuff is really bad. I would not be touching ultra modern Star Wars unless you have money to burn. If you have money to burn, do whatever the hell you want, right? People walk into casinos every night and lose money. But if you're trying to carefully build a collection, buying any modern Star Wars boxes is just setting fire to money. I think the new Topps Chrome, it's not expensive if you get it at retail, like $150. Sure, have some fun. Buying a $3,000 box or buying into these crazy, I saw somebody running a one of those whatnot things where it was like 400 characters for or 120 characters, $40 a piece for Galactic Antiquities. And most people aren't even going to get a card. Just like stay away from that stuff, unless you like to set fire to money, and that's your call. What I would also say is that what I've seen is this continuous movement away from kind of middle level cards. I think I always talk about separating the wheat from the chaff, the cream rising to the crop. That is happening entirely across Star Wars cards, which is that there is a market for the best cards. The stuff in the middle is just done. It's just like it just doesn't exist. What do I mean by stuff in the middle? I recently heard this term, which I've never heard before, which is called commodity cards, which comes down to a card that you can always buy. And a card that you can always buy, there just isn't enough demand, say in Star Wars, to have cards that are super liquid. There's one card that has, is super liquid, which is just the Luke, that transacts all the time. But that's it. Like, other than that, like, if you're buying anything, by the way, when I talk about ultra modern Star Wars cards, I mean, basically, if you take out the 2020 Mandalorian set and some of the first two Mandalorian sets, like, I think everything in the past, like, 6 years, I mean, like, that's kind of the point. It's like you could pick a few cards out of each set that have value, but that's it. And what I have seen is that there is had been a growing level. Wow, a Wonder Bread PSA 10 went for $1,880. This is a few months ago. I don't pay as close attention as I used to. I have to admit, I missed some sales that I like. That's something again, my concerns about PSA keep me from pushing the envelope. That's a great price. Here are all the kind of Hamill autos, which have seen a pretty, considerable drop over time because there's just more on the market. But what I was just saying is that, hey, Luke is the only thing that transacts. Everything in the middle is kind of questionable. The PSA 7, the PSA 8 Lukes, we saw a huge dip kind of in the PSA 7s for a while. and then they somewhat stabilized. But the other part is like, yeah, I go and show you is that like we'll look at some other stuff, but 77 is, and I don't just look at 77. It's just the easiest one because it's the biggest market. But if PSA has been backed up and all sorts of things. You look at basically this year 4,000 cards 77 cards have been graded the first 7 months. In the first 7 months of last year, I think we had how many? About 10, 11,000, 12,000. So it's a third of the number of them. I'm seeing, first of all, there's lower demand in that middle level, sevens, eights, sixes. People just aren't getting enough. There's enough money to be made for people to do it. So people slowed down, and that has kind of, made demand a little more interesting. I see the value of kind of the like PSA 8 1977 cards slowly moving up. If you go back a year or 2 years, there are these huge kind of dumps on eBay in auctions, and you could buy them at really low prices. Here's looking at kind of when the PSA 7s dropped to their low, which was around $200, which I had never seen before. It didn't last very long. We'll see. And then there's the PSA 6. But you're just kind of not seeing as many. I'm curious about the Princess Leia. Like we saw the 10 of the Princess Leia sell. Does eBay not want to work right now? Let's go off of sold. Yeah, my what I'm going after here is that I don't really see kind of a lot of the bigger cards just sitting there anymore. Like there's not a lot of like PSA 9 Leia. Like I wouldn't know. Like, there's no peachy PSA 9 Leia. I just wonder if there's even any for sale at this point. No, there aren't. I mean, they're just like you used to always kind of be able to find like a PSA 9 Leia, and like you can't really find them anymore. There are a lot of cards like that they just the higher end have just disappeared. I'm sure you can find a PSA 8 of the Leia. We're getting into all sorts of things I don't care about. I'm just using this as an example of like I think the market is somewhat like the bifurcation of hey, it's healthy in spots. You could buy these at one point for when the kind of these purges were going on. You could buy these for like $70. Here's one for $165. I don't know what they have sold for recently, but you just don't you're not seeing them. They're just not here. Like it was every week. There was a new auction for a PSA 8 Leia, a PSA 8 Darth Vader, and you're not seeing that anymore. Well, let's. Okay, so I'll go into some other things. So I mentioned Andor. Andor, I was surprised. I'm a big Rogue One Andor collector. More Rogue One because there really aren't Andor cards. But I was surprised that coming into Andor, there was no build-up. There was you could look at it, it was like no Cassian Andor cards that had sold at all, kind of none of anything. And then after Andor ended, that started to pick up. And I will show you that, the holy grail of Cassian Andor cards is the 2016, Rogue One. There is a 1 of 1. Nobody's ever seen it. But outside of that, they're gold 50s out of 50. And then what we saw was somebody put up for sale a gold Jyn and a gold Cassian. These were both serial numbered number 1. They're the alphas. I had never seen either of these cards auctioned. It's kind of crazy. They're not in good condition. I would say they would both grade 7s at best. But they're alphas, and I'd never seen this before. It ended up selling for $26.60, which I thought it kind of basically shows the value of this. There are only 50 of these, and I have two of them, so there are only 48 out there. I know somebody has one other, so there are only 47 that are going to be available. And we finally saw one for sale. I'll get into this maybe when I talk about what I've been buying and selling on a different video. About, I was a bidder on this and then backed out for different reasons. I only wanted the Jin because I have the Cassians. But 2660 for, I've kind of seen this in general, that there is a hardcore Star Wars fan base that is growing tired of the modern stuff and then starting to explore what would I perceive as the most valuable stuff and the hardest to find is the least type of commodity cards. We can go back over here and we can see then right after this, somebody else put up another Cassian that went for 1376, which I know who bought it, and I'm pretty sure I could have run. Like, I decided not to push this. I knew who was bidding on it, and I knew that they wanted it, and I knew I wasn't going to beat their price, so I wasn't going to just run it up on them. But I thought this one's in much better shape. You know, I don't think it'll be with 10. I think somewhere around a 9. I mean, I have them, and but 1376 I still think is a kind of a low price for this. And you know, in the years that I've been collecting, I had never seen a Cassian for auction. Then you see two of them come up. There had been one that went up for sale, got bought in 5 minutes for $50. Sorry for the person who just decided to put a buy it now for that. I ended up getting that from a friend who I'm still repaying for it. I appreciate that. Thanks, Will. You know, so these are kind of big sales for older cards. You know, you never see an out of 50 modern card going for these prices. But I think these are low, and these are going to collectors, and they're not going to be seen again. So another card that falls in this category is kind of this. Let's see if I have it here. The Ahsoka Tano 2008. I have a storied history with this card. I still own one with a partner in a PSA 8. We had a PSA 9. We sold it. This one just popped up and sold in 3 hours for $1,800. These are cards that just, you know, they're really hard to find. And it's kind of, this is what I see. I see people buying the 2015 Rebels card, the foil cards, those prices going up. You know, the Rogue One cards, if I go back in here, there were a couple of for sale that I'm actually angry. Here was a Krennic Gold 10 that my buddy sold, and I'm actually mad because I know what it sold for now. And I told him he sold it for less than I would have paid, and he wouldn't have had to pay any eBay fees. So Peter, you messed up. I seriously was going to buy this. I own one of these. This was a disgustingly low sale. I don't know why it took so long. But there were some raw cards like this Jin Rebel Hero. They're just, I mean, again, they're 50 of them went for 267 raw. You just don't see that. There was a Bodhi Rook PSA 10. I'm telling you, you don't see these cards. You don't see them out there. And there was there's the Bodhi Rook. Here's another Jin. Here's a Vader. I was bidding on that Vader. I don't know what. Oh, I guess this was a lot of. Oh, geez, I didn't see this. Wonder what this was. They see they have all the pictures here. Okay, they only have. Oh, I wonder what was in this lot. 11 golds and 25 grays. Again, yeah, I mean you can see a lot of the Rogue One type stuff. Obviously, I keep track of Rogue One because I collect it, and I don't let things go out there. Just Cassian rookies. You saw them sell like after the fact. I think I missed one because like a Cassian Black sold. But here's a Vader Gold that just sold the other day for 111. This one had sat there forever and just got sold at the right value. So the Cassian market pushed up. Like I don't really have any of my Cassians for sale. But it was good to see that kind of, you know, with Ahsoka, there was a run up to the show. And here's another gold. And then they kind of like, they showed it kind of pan out as well as people wanted, and the prices kind of, I don't want to say they stagnated, but they didn't. It was kind of the reverse of what you saw with Andor, which was kind of cool. Yeah, I mean those two sales were to see the Ahsoka sell for 1,800 again, to see these Cassian and the Jins, wherever that one was. Maybe this is the one. No. Yeah. It's the only Jin I've ever seen for sale. Pretty nice sales. You know, I let's see, what else do we have in here? All right, we're going to do one of our favorite things. We're just going to look at galactic antiquities, or because I just want to kind of hammer home. I mean, you can still buy a box of Rogue One for around $350, $400. What you call it? A hobby box when you can find them. They're not really out there, but I just kind of just saying that like hyper rare cards versus this. Here are the galactic antiquities. I haven't looked at this, so you know maybe I'm wrong. Let's see, highest first, and here is a Pedro Pascal. I don't know why they chose to do it like this. It was in the UK. I didn't understand this 101, but you can see these Pedros didn't really sell for much. There's just not a lot of cards. My point here is that this was like, it was very obvious that you got murdered on these cards if you bought them. The only thing that you could hit was a Natalie Portman out here that would pay for a box. Yeah, I mean it's just bad. I mean, let me just do some other things here. Let's just look at just Star Wars PSA overall, and we're just going to look at recent sales. We don't want to see highest. Let's just look at entered recently. Just give you an idea of like, I mean, PSA 6s. Another thing I'll add is just like, these all look like buy it nows, and somebody just listed these and somebody scooped them up. Auctions are really just, they're a mistake. You know, unless you need the money, auctioning cards are just, it's just bad news in Star Wars. Let me step back a second to like kind of those bigger cards. When you're, you know, a lot of this comes down to simple economics. There are more Star Wars collectors than there ever have been. Those older cards, there are just not a lot of them. So you don't need whatever 5,000 people looking for an Ahsoka or a Cassian or a Rainbow Foil or whatever it is, a James Earl Jones auto, when there are only a handful of them. It just comes down to the number of people looking versus what, you know, how much money they have and what they're willing to bid for, and that's what drives prices up. And when prices go up, people pay attention, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy of, unless there's like suddenly an ability for an influx or somehow pumped, that's how markets go up over time. I was watching some videos from the National Sports Collector Conference. I saw a card collector do buy a 101 from the Return of the Jedi set for, I think he paid like $750, $850. I'm like, wow, that's strong. I do think there's some 101 fatigue that people need to be careful of. People still love their superfractors, but you're getting hundreds and hundreds of them every year. That's interesting. I just saw this card last night. I was like, that's only worth that much money. And it just sold. I guess it must have just recently listed and got sold. It's a gold Val Sartha. But just going through here, I mean, this is part of the reason I haven't done videos for a while. It's like, same thing. It's like a little bit of a broken record. Grading modern Star Wars cards. Here's a PSA 10 diamond that you're getting $35 for. You know, you're not making any money. There's just not a lot in it. And by the way, when we're looking at this, these are all buy it nows for the most part. These are not auctions, because people realize that if you run an auction, you're getting demolished. So like the nature of the market has changed. It used to be you just kind of like snipe auctions and see what you could get. And that's a cool Sabine Wren refractor. Um, but you can't really do that anymore. It's like a Cassian living. Um, just I'll also go look at the ending soonest. Here's that the Ahsoka that sold, I guess, yesterday. Um, People were pumping these 96 finest for a while. I mean, I know the refractor's worth more, but here's a Han Solo PSA 10, and you know, $36. It's just not a place you want to be. It's not a place you want to be putting your money into. Um, Finding more Hamill authentic autos. I'll do a video at some point on the what you call it, the autograph scandal. If you know me at all, you probably know my opinion on the autograph scandal. So, but yeah, there was a big autograph, whatever bust, and it brings a lot of kind of like in person and of the card stuff into question. I mean, look at this. A Luthen Throwback Thursday was the easiest one to see. PSA 10 Luthen, $21. Anytime a card can't get your grading fees back in a PSA 10, obviously you shouldn't be going after it. But here's a Jin. I don't know what the actual sale price on this is, but like, it's an out of 5. I've heard like basically it's like out of 10 and below still seem to hold value in big characters. People sometimes get lost in thinking, well, whatever. I don't young Anakin Skywalker in a 10 or out of 10 is worth money. It's like the character matters. The people are they, in my opinion, genuinely are starting to have better taste. You're bifurcating into people who are kind of continuing to be lulled into the breaks and the opinions of Whatnot, eBay Live, Fanatics Live, and it's not working. A lot of people who were breaking Star Wars last year, this time, and at the national convention aren't even talking about it much. It's just obvious to see that they kind of slaughtered the sheep instead of shearing it, and that has changed the market. I mean, there's a cool there's stuff like this out of 10 die cut 2020 finest, one bid $100. You know what I mean? Like, let's go in here. Let's just get rid of the sold on here somehow, and then we'll look at like what is up for auction, ending soonest. That's a nice number 58. Another thing to mention is that, like, okay, so Harrison Ford announced that he's doing a signing. I don't really follow that stuff enough but people tell me Harrison Ford is doing a signing like Hamill did, and that pumped the Han Solo market for a little while, and still is a bit. I mean, I sold some Han Solos that had been sitting forever. I actually even raised the prices, in some cases doubled the price, and they sold. Because I didn't want to, I wasn't trying to gouge or anything. I just didn't want to sell them. I would get offers, and I'm like, I don't want to sell this. Let me just double the price. And then somebody would offer 90% of that, and I'd be like, okay, all right. I think you're getting a little, usually I'll have multiple of them. But we're just looking at what's up for sales. All the stuff is mostly garbage. And, I don't know why Spider-Man shows up in here, but no piece. But like none of this has a bid. I don't think we've seen anything with a bid yet. So here's a bid on a Galaxy Refractor out of 50 Ewok. Nothing else on here has a singular bid. So, like I said, auctions are just not really what is driving the Star Wars market at all anymore. I mean, you do see, I bought something at auction today, which was, I only found it because somebody put me onto it, and like it was, I think, kind of a crazy deal. Here you go. We have a Han Solo PSA 7, getting 15 bids for tomorrow. So, you do see, like, if you start it low enough, you'll get it. But this modern stuff, Galaxy, unless it's a big card, it gets no action. Here's a Cad Bane Book of Boba Fett auto, whatever. It's very difficult. Here's a Galaxy out of 50 Maul. Again, it's you're just not seeing the action, but you're like, um, but the market isn't that bad. Like you don't like I sold a bunch of Return of the Jedi cards over the last 4 or 5 months. Same person, I think, one or two people, but there aren't a lot out there because people aren't grading them. These are not the cards that people want. Although this one is like this is actually something where uh, I would even consider buying that. Oh man, I hate you, eBay. It's like I'm not signed in right now. What's all? There's 110. There's 36 nines. Like it's a little high, but it's a Luke Skywalker 9. Like that's something I would probably mess with. All the cards I've been selling are 9s. Like a lot of Return of the Jedi does not have PSA 10s. The amount of activity that you're seeing in Empire and Return of the Jedi is just absolutely minimal, which is a shame. Those are two awesome sets, and they got buried because you know. Ooh, what the hell is this? Oh, this is I almost got fooled. This is a 99 Chrome. I was like a PSA 10 of a Return of the Jedi card. I could get involved in that. But yeah, I mean it's like those cards got graded to hell, burnt the market, and now with the cost of PSA going up and the difficulty to grade those cards, it's just too much of a gamble to want to send them in. So you're just not seeing. I wonder if I can go back here. If we can go sort by year. Let's see if we can look at 1980 Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. What are we looking for here? Yeah, I think this would be it. Let's look at the set trend here. Like you look at this, like here we went from 10,000 to 18,000, and then this calendar year, we've graded like 500 of these cards. So it's like it has just stopped. And they don't issue a lot of tens. It's just that like it's just looking at Empire and looking at Return of the Jedi is just a way to see how messed up PSA is, and that they can rise and destroy a market. So yeah, I mean the value of kind of like the 1980 like Boba Fett stuff, 1980 tops Boba Fett PSA 9. I mean these were like $700-800 at one point, and now I don't even know if there are any for sale. I mean I think people just here's one for 300 best offer. Here's one for 250. These have dipped down as low as 150 for those. Here's one for 150 by it's OC though. Always that scam. I don't know. I really can't. Here's a one for 185. Buy it now. It just listen. I mentioned commodity cards. Until all these cards disappear, it's not really going to transact that well. Yoda has held up better, to be perfectly honest. And then Boba Fett, and that's just some of that just comes down to the what you call it. If you look at the amount that were graded, 935 of these were graded in 628 Yodas. Only 410 Yodas. These cards are really low in pop count in tens, so that's part of what drives it. But yeah. I mean, there's some great cards here, but people are just not there yet. I think they will get there at some point. I think Empire. The issue is there's like I said, there's no deals to be had. Empire Strikes Back PSA. Used to be when there was all these kind of like people grading them and auctioning them, there were deals to be had. There's a Mark Hamill auto. But you know, you look here. These are just some of the sales. So somebody paid. Oh no, Peachy. I was like, why did someone pay $200 for? But there's nothing really here. Like there's no. I'm not seeing like PSA 10s. This Luke Skywalker was cool, but you're not really seeing PSA 10s. So there's not really an opportunity to just like buy anything at a low price and then even hold it. I think I sold some stuff. I don't see it on here. I do think in time that the PSA 10s, especially for the Empire, probably is the coolest cards of all of them. The best images that kind of show you Star Wars. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't bought an Empire card in I can't tell you how long. Like I wish I'd bought this. Still banned from Four Sharp Corners after 3 years for canceling a sale. Yeah, that's a good bit. Do not use Four Sharp Corners to auction off your Star Wars cards. They've just banned too many people, and that's a mistake that can be made. Let's see. I think I'm pretty much done. I don't know what like what Star Wars 101. I know this is not going to work. I have my this is doing completed and sold. This is do ended recently. I know you can do it with I have something saved where you can do it like minus sketches and all that stuff, because sketches are too much of this 101 stuff. But like just an idea of like how 101s have just kind of overtaken it. Sketches are a different part, and it's like I'm not a sketch collector. There are people that are. It's a different discussion. Essentially, I believe that like there's good art and bad art, and that you should not lump all sketches together, and too often people do. My friend Sam's just sold this. He hit this while he was at the National Superfractor. But here 101, Diego Luna 1756 from Signature Series. What I've seen in 101s is that there are just too many 101s. And obviously with all these sketches, it makes it even harder. I wonder if I hit in here, or I hit minus sketch. If that'll do anything. Yeah, it seems to have done something. It's an Amelia Clark. It's not a 101. So much of the stuff that we do ended recently. Yeah, ended recently. Now I could do plates too, but the value of 101s just keep going down. Here's a Chewbacca 101. And you should just keep that in mind for two reasons. One is that if you're looking to buy a 101, know what you're buying. And then also that when you're opening product, if you're hitting some random character 101, it's just not. This is like, here's a Giancarlo Esposito, like Galactic Antiquities, my favorite thing to look at and just make fun of. But yeah, I mean, if you're like, hey, if I hit a 101, I can't pay for a box, it's just time not to buy that. And I think that Fanatics claims that that's another. Fanatics claims that they've been saying for years they're building and going bigger into non-sports, and I'll believe that when I see it. Here's some Rogue One like poster card, 10 by 14 101s that I don't understand really what they are, so I wouldn't have been a bidder anyway. I'm not like, if I had Cassian on it, I would have been after it. And then our favorite where people are just like saying things are 101s but they're not. The value of 101s is just going down and down and down. But not like, if it matters and people like it, it's just like, here, this random Gamorrean guard 101. It's like, it's just, they're a couple $100, or if you go later, they're cheaper than that. The subject matter matters. Shmi Skywalker, who cares? Like, there's somebody who collects everything. That part I've learned from, you know, my time that I spent on Whatnot. It's like, do you have droids? Do you have vehicles? Yeah, it's just those, the number of people, it's just like some of the other stuff. The number of people that collect that are smaller. Therefore, the demand isn't higher. So listen, I have all this stuff up here. I'll go back to switching on to like some of my favorite card. Um, the Star Wars card market is doing what I thought it would do for the most part. I don't want to say that, like, I don't think it took a rocket scientist to see that uh, the modern cards that were coming out were just too expensive, too many parallels. You know, Star Wars cards are not sports cards. They're non-sports cards are not sports cards. I don't think you can put out 6 or 8 products a year that have the same characters, the same images, and then have and just random parallels and make them have value. I do think over time, you know, you could look at a set. I don't know what it is. Hyperspace, Chrome Black. I'll be like, there's an insert that people fall in love with, and that happens. That it takes time. Like things need time to marinate for kind of that cream to rise to the crop for people to go, you know what, I really do hate hyperspace, but there was something inside of it that I loved and that people will chase. And rarely is what people, man, I don't want to say rarely what people chase right away is what they chase long term, but, you know, it just takes time to settle. I know for like myself, like I hated Book of Boba Fett when it first came out, the cards, and it's like now I collect some Book of Boba Fett stuff because I was like, you know what, I do hate 95% of this set, but there's 5% that really fits into the way I collect and what I collect. But from a price standpoint, like those commodity cards, I don't think they're moving. And you know, if you want to look at that out of 10 or less thing, like said, since I know that's, you know, Topps is continuing the debut concept in Chrome this year, and Star Wars rookies. I don't know why it's such a hard thing for people to be like, there are Star Wars rookies. There are Star Wars rookies, and people collecting them. It's just the same nature of how most people don't come to Star Wars collecting from not cards. They come from they're Star Wars people who collect sports cards and come to Star Wars cards. That's how most people come into it. That doesn't mean all. So they understand rookies, and that is continues to be something that holds value over time. And is worth looking into. And I think even with the modern stuff is like, okay, if you want 25 Topps Chrome and you want to get the Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte stuff out of there, like I can understand it. You know, I personally, if I decide to buy it, it will be a secondary market. I'm not. Topps Chrome is the thing I would be most likely to rip, just because it seems to be what the flagship is this day. It's not as expensive, but the rookies, these are the things that are holding value. I mean, there are people like like I'm not a Galaxy collector, but it does seem like some of the better Galaxy stuff. Obviously, the first year Galaxy is an animal of its own, but it does seem like a portion of each Galaxy set does maintain value and goes even higher. I'm looking at this. I forgot. One of the reasons this card went for less is it was located in Germany, and a lot of people don't have it set to even look at things that come internationally. I forgot. I hope the guy who bought this got this. That's again. I'll do another video where I talk about what I've been buying, and I'll go into the story of this person who bought this and the other one, and along with some of the other stuff that I've been buying. But yeah, I mean, I'm not telling you to go out and buy anything. Buy whatever you like. I think the idea of trying to flip in Star Wars cards is practically dead. You know, it just depends on what you mean by flip. Like, I mean, I used to be able to buy cards, and I'm talking about within the last 2 years, where I would buy a card and I could list it before it showed up at my house, and I could probably sell it. It still happens from time to time, but it's just not worth the energy for me. And I'm just, you know, I used to do that to try to kind of roll it up and buy bigger cards. Um, that's not what I'm after. But I think that there is health to the Star Wars collecting market, and I think that the last video I might have recorded where I was like, the nature is beginning to heal. I do think that. I think that people will jump into Chrome again because we haven't had a product for a little while. But I think people are getting smarter, and the people with money aren't dumb. Like you kind of thin the herd, and the people that really like to collect stay in it, and they continue to do that. I know for me, like I haven't bought nearly as much this year as I have in past because I kind of like if they're not making new cards that I want, then there's just less for me to go after. So it's not. I'm definitely more selective. But I think my point of view, I don't want to say is everybody's point of view because it definitely is not. But I see it being reverberated through a lot of collectors that I know. They're like, okay, well, there's not a lot of reason to race out and buy things that. I'm pause for a second because it's this kind of duality of like if you see something that you really want and you have to have, you kind of should overpay for it. Be willing to overpay for it. And like this is stuff that has happened over the last couple of years of like people just buying things because I think they're deals has stopped, and that like just buying deals because you don't really flip them. And same for me. So the quantity goes down. So I think there are a lot of like if you're buying better Star Wars cards and your timeline is longer, I think you'll do fine. Um, I I've seen from the people that I know in the hobby that they're struggling to find volume to collect, meaning that like everybody I see is buying less because you know the, and it could be just the groups I run with that the modern stuff doesn't appeal to them as much. Yeah, maybe this a little bit here and there, um, but and the older stuff they're just kind of picking their spots, and they'd rather pay up when a real card comes out than just like buy a card to just hold a place. And some of that goes back to like PSA is a piece of shit, and I think they suck. And I've kind of withheld it for most of this video, and I think but I think you have to have this cognitive dissonance to be in the hobby on some level to be like, they suck, but there's such a fixture of what's going on that you cannot, remove them from the way you collect. And that's a, something to make your mind mess with. And I think is something that has spread a lot further than people even talk about, which is that I think people have lost faith considerably in PSA, but then they have these moments where they're like, but I have to have this card in a 9 because like there are only 3 10s, and like, and I do it too. But I think that if you look, even the biggest defenders of PSA, they've moved a bit, and there's just too many examples of them being questionable, and that extends to Star Wars. So that people like we're staring at this Cassian card. It's like I don't really care if I have it in a 10. Yeah, you'd prefer it. Watch it. I still consume a lot of content. The content is abysmal for the most part. But the people, when it comes to cards, this is something like when I mentioned earlier about not grading modern Star Wars cards. Is that like when it comes to a card like this one we're looking at here, or the Ahsoka, it's like you get it graded because it gives a comfort level with the person that you're going to sell it to, that it's not, it's not creased, it's real, all those things. But like, if you could stare at it in person next to you, like the point being is the raw value is is more that it's real and not destroyed is more important than it is a perfect copy. Of course, everybody would want a perfect copy, but when it's like something that you can't really find, um, it condition has less to do with it, and I think that's. One thing I can tell you is that like today was the first day I bought a card that was not serial numbered. I think in the last 6 months, um, and it was a couple of sets that have limited print runs. Even the print runs are known, so it's not it's theoretically serial numbered. So, but what I'm saying about that is that like when it comes to serial numbered cards, especially if they're really low numbered, condition matters, but only so much. Getting the card matters more, and I think that kind of is kind of hammers home that like just grading a card doesn't always matter. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to part of the reason I'm going in circles a little bit is because I'm trying not to talk about all the cards that I haven't bought a lot of cards in the last 6 months. I think I've bought a total of maybe, not counting today, probably like 10 cards. Somewhere in that range, 10, 15 cards. But they're all real nice. And, you know, I'm actually planning on doing a PSA submission. I have not submitted anything in a long time, and that's the cognitive dissonance of, hey, I want to sell some cards that I just have sitting here, and they're just too hard to sell um, in raw. So I'm just gonna do the gamble where I send them into PSA, and no, I'm gonna get some tens, no, I'm gonna get some nines, eights, sevens, and sixes, and just eat it and just so that I can move some of the cards. And it's not like the reason I want to move these cards is simply that I just have too many cards. Nothing more complicated than that. They're cards, or I have 6 and 7 of them because I thought that was a good thing to do at some point. I don't want to do that anymore. But yeah, to get back to the Star Wars card market of like, I think the Star Wars card market will continue to do well in the best stuff. And for me, as it related to PSA, it's hard to wrap my head around that value being in the grade versus the scarcity of the card. And that's why I've been like drawn to cards that are more like serial numbered from, say 2021 to 2008, because that was not a high production time and a lot of things, and they're harder to find. Um, and once grading makes me feel better, maybe I'll go more back into 77 and stuff. I still love the cards. They're just will take some time. So I don't know. I went for almost an hour, which is, I hope I actually upload this and people get to see it. We'll see. Yeah, that's gonna do it for me. As I like to say, I'm not sports cards, and I'm out.